All right, take fucking one. Hey. We're back.
We back.
Live in person. We're back.
Love being in person. Way better.
This has been like the anthem of my internship the last like month.
Really? Are they playing it at work or just like in general?
Yeah, just at work. Like,
Really?
just this one kid, he's so fucking funny. But he's like, yo. And I'm like, yo, let's play this song.
So good. Like, while you guys are working, you just like start bumping?
Yeah.
That's so
There's like a big ass speaker. Like, it's pretty sick.
That's sick. Get the energy going in the office.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Love that.
All right, so today's episode, we're going to be talking about mental health and just, I guess, essentially starting the conversation on mental health and, you know, our experiences with it and where we're hoping to go from here. So, yeah, I guess anything you want to say on it?
I'm excited to dive into it and see what we both got to say.
All right, dope. I'm going to stop the music, even though this is a banger. We got the screen recording going today, so if we need to go to Jamie at any point, we'll be chilling for that.
It's pretty hyped for that, honestly. It's going to be good stuff moving forward.
Word. So, yeah, I guess first topic of discussion will be our personal experiences with mental health and dealing with mental health. And so I guess the first question, CJ, I have for you is, like, if you'd be willing to share a personal story about a time where you struggled with mental health.
Yeah, I'll dive right into it. So, I mean, throughout life, for sure, just like the ups and downs happen. You go through it all. And when I was in high school, I used to struggle, like, getting up to go to school in the morning. Like, I didn't like school, so it was something I had to work through.
I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that.
Oh, yeah, I feel it's pretty reoccurring one for a lot of people. But I used to, like, just hate getting up and going to school. It wasn't, like, necessarily tiredness or anything like that. I just genuinely did not want to be there. And so it was just, I would say it was my first, like, kind of running with it a little bit, was just motivating myself to do things I didn't want to do.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to jump forward a little bit to even just this week. Like, midway through the week, I just really wasn't feeling work. I really enjoy what I do, but I just was, like, not feeling it. Did not want to go out and do it that day. So I sat down and I talked to my mom, and she was like, well, what's your reason for not wanting to do it that day? And so I, like, broke down and was like, I actually don't really know. Like, do I just not want to do it, or is it a lack of motivation? And I came to the conclusion was basically just, I need like 30 minutes, refresh, and just got back out and did it. And, you know, it's like one of those things where you put yourself in your own funk, and I just had, like, a bad mindset that morning. I just need to take a few minutes to reset and get back after it.
Yeah, so when, like, during those 30 minutes where you took to refresh, like, what were you doing? Like, how were you dealing with that, like, fatigue, I guess, or?
Yeah, so one thing that really helps me is just, like, putting my computer away for that time. Like, if I'm resetting my brain, I'm resetting my brain. I'm not going to sit there and, like, all right, I don't feel like going out talking to someone, but I'm going to write emails. I don't feel like talking to someone, but I'm going to watch a video. Like, I'm putting my technology away during that time. And then I would say there's 3 main things I'll do, and that's, like, prayer and meditation, working out. Shit, what was the third one? Prayer and meditation, working out, and reading are, like, the 3 I'll go for. And, like, sometimes praying involves reading, and sometimes meditation involves reading, and sometimes working out. It's like, it sounds like, but they all, like, those are the 3 things: prayer, meditation, and working out. Prayer, reading, and working out are the 3 things that help me reset.
Yeah. I think those 3 things, that what they all have in common is they are things that kind of get you out of your own head. So, like, you were saying, like, you were causing your own problems, right? Like, you couldn't even think of why you didn't want to feel like you could do this, right? Fuck, I don't even know where I was going to go with that, but they all have in common is that they, like, get you out of your head and into your body. So, like, you're, like, with meditation, you're focusing on your surroundings. Like, working out, you're focusing on, like, your specific body parts. That, like, could also apply to, like, yoga or anything like that. in those regards. And reading, it's just like putting yourself in a different world. Like it's like your imagination. So.
Yeah. I think that's exactly what it is, especially with the working out too. That's probably my favorite one when I'm like feeling unmotivated. Is when you get up and work out, there's like a sense of accomplishment if you go and you're like, all right, like, I don't want to, I just got 45 minutes a day. It's like good for my health, and you go and you do it. There's nothing better than that. I would say second for me, prayer. Just love prayer. Helps you reset, refresh. Always got to thank God. And then reading's just relaxing. So
yeah, could you describe more like that sense of accomplishment you get from like working out?
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, just from reading about it and everything too, you get a boosted dopamine after you work out. So even when it's something you don't like, it like fires up your body, it fires up your brain. There's a lot of things that go on in your body when you work out, and I think it just helps you get into a better mood. Like, it's like you start your day with your hardest activity, and so it makes the rest of the day feel easier. So if you go on a long run or lift like a heavy weight, it makes the rest of your day feel easier after that.
Yeah, so diving back to like when you were in high school and you didn't want to go to school or anything, like were you familiar with any of these things? And if not, like how were you introduced to those coping?
Yeah, I mean, I was into sports, so I like enjoyed working out in that sense, but I didn't work out in the sense of like, all right, we're gonna bust my body to the bone today and just power through it. Same with like the prayer. I didn't pray really much at all when I was in high school, and also I just didn't read. So like those are like the three things I use the most now. I never used then. I would say my coping mechanisms were like watching TV, YouTube, sleep, like stuff like that. It wasn't healthy, or what I would consider healthy coping mechanisms for.
Why wouldn't you consider that a healthy coping mechanism?
Well, I think TV, YouTube, I really enjoy listening to podcasts even, but I feel like they heighten you. Like when you're listening to it, you're really focused on what they're talking about, trying to like absorb what they say. And it's not focusing the energy on yourself. Like when you're reading a book, you're focusing the energy on yourself and self-reflecting while you read a book. I feel like when you listen to a podcast, you're focusing on the other person. Same with TV, you're focusing on the characters in the show. And even in sleeping, sleeping's good when you're tired, but if you're sleeping through things you need to get done, it's not an effective way to get things done and make yourself feel better when it's actually time to sleep. Yeah,
that makes sense. But like, what would you say to the person that's just like, oh, like, I just need to like watch a TV episode and then I'll be okay? Like,
I mean, everyone has a different thing, but I really do believe if you took that 35, 45 minutes, you're going to watch a TV episode and worked out, I bet you after that 45 minutes, you feel 10 times better if you worked out than you would if you watched TV.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know anyone who starts their day by watching an episode of TV. I know a lot of people that start their day by working out. And I know those people that start their day by working out are genuinely successful people. And if they're not necessarily, like, successful in a money standpoint, they're in good shape, they're happy, and they're very comfortable with who they are.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and it's like, it's a good point that you would feel a lot better after a workout than watching an episode of TV. Like, yes, they are both versions of, like, getting out of your own head and escaping into something. But when you're watching a TV show, like, you don't really have anything to show for it afterwards. It's more of, like, a temporary fix, like a temporary solution than, like, addressing what's at the root cause of why you're feeling negative in the first place.
Yeah.
So, like, when you do something like journaling or working out, like, you're diving into, like, yourself. Like, yeah, it's not your head, but it's like your different body parts. You're getting in touch with yourself still.
That's such a good point. I didn't even think about that, but that's one of my favorite parts about reading is the sense of accomplishment, because I enjoy reading, but there's something about when you read a book, and if you read, like, 10 pages the first day you read the book, you don't really see it, right? It's not like, then you read 10 pages, but then when you're 50 pages into the book, you see that when you put your bookmark in, it's halfway through the thing, like, there's a sense of accomplishment there. You're like, look at that, like, I've achieved, like, I've gotten through that much.
Well, what about, like, if I was watching fucking, like, Breaking Bad on Netflix, and I'm like, oh, I just watched 3 episodes. I'm this percentage through the show now. Like, oh, like, should I feel good about myself? Like, what's the difference between reading a book and watching a TV show?
I when you think about it like that, there's not really much of a difference. But for me, like when I see a TV show, it's all on that screen. It's all flat. It's like one dimensional there. The book, like I see, I don't know. There's something about the book. It works for me. Like if I'm reading a book,
Well, what are like
and I see like that.
What are the contents of like the books you're reading?
They're usually like mindset, perspective, business related, like goal orientated books.
Okay.
So maybe that's part of the reason why it makes me feel so good to read too, because I'm reading books that are goal orientated.
Like if you were reading Game of Thrones, like would you still feel the same way, or like Harry Potter?
I don't know. I haven't read a like fiction book or a book that's just meant for the story in so long. I haven't thought about that. Maybe there is a different sense of accomplishment, because maybe those books are more like self-reflection and meditation than they are like truly reading a story.
Yeah, well, I would take that, like, the argument of TV show versus book as a coping mechanism for dealing with mental health. Like, I would say that they're both, like, can be beneficial. It's just, like, you never want to overindulge in anything. It's much easier to keep sitting there and watching a TV show than it is to sit there and keep reading a book.
Yeah.
Right? So meaning like you can overindulge and binge watch a TV show for like your whole entire day, and at that point it's just consumed you, and it's probably going to make you end up feeling even worse than you were. So like that's like a cool, I guess, way to kind of look about like coping with dealing with negative mental health. But so it's like, I guess I wanted to ask again, like, how did you, like, was there a specific point or anything, or like how did you go from like just playing like casual sports, not really doing anything to help your mental health, to having all these different hobbies and outlets now? Like, was there any like specific point, or were you introduced like periodically to these things? Like, how did it come about?
I would say just definitely slowly happened between the different ways I like to handle it. Especially when I was home and you and like a lot of people started to head off to school, I was like kind of like, I wasn't alone, but I was at home. Like I didn't have like a core group of friends around me anymore like I had for the past many years. So like working out became a big thing I did. Like I would spend probably about an hour a day at the like gym lifting and whatnot. So I would say that was like the first coping mechanism I got. So when I got really into trying to get in better shape, because I felt like I'd let myself go and I wasn't proud of when I looked in the mirror, and I was like, all right, this is the first thing I gotta fix. Is like if I physically, I like the way I look, that'll mentally make me feel more confident, and then that'll just come together into like being in a better mood, uplifting, and to like drive and wanting for more success and stuff like that.
So was there like a specific moment where you like realized you had to make a change, or?
Yeah, I actually remember the day. I just looked, I wouldn't say there was anything in particular necessarily happened. I just kind of like looked at myself and I was like, geez, dude. It was one of those, like, you know how every once in a while you self-reflect, or you've been doing like a bad habit and you just get that like, yeah, that's got to stop. Like how, and then you come up with like a plan of how you're going to do it. I would say it was that. I just looked at myself in the mirror one day and was like, all right, it's time to like see what I can do here. And then it just slowly built the process into getting in better shape. And I would say during that same time, not quite at the same time, a little later, but just being by myself made me kind of turn to faith more, because you're never alone when you're with God. So that made me turn to faith a little bit more, and that's kind of how I got into like the prayer, meditation side. I feel like prayer is a form of meditation, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
So that's kind of how that started.
Yeah. Well, would you say, like, or like, what was it about being by yourself, like, or was it your environment or anything like that allowed you to kind of have that like self-reflection, to be able to be like, fuck, man, like, because I've been there before too, like I know what you're saying, but like sometimes when I was in a situation like that, I didn't have like the proper people or environment around me to actually make a change.
Yeah. Well, I think it's what you do by yourself is what builds you up to be the person you are in front of others. So for example, if you're never like practice, like, so professional athletes, for example, this is a really easy comparison. If you're never, like, if you're a hockey player and you're never practicing your shot when you're not with the team and practicing, if you're never lifting when you're not with the team, if you're never doing any of those things when you're not with your team, when you get with your team and they've all been doing that outside of practice too, it's going to show and you're going to be falling behind. And more for my example, it's like I work in sales. If I'm not, like, when I'm on the phone with people, that's practice and that's getting better. When I'm talking to people in person, that's practice and I'm getting better. But I'm physically working at that time. You don't show up for the championship game never playing a game before. And so when I'm outside of work, I'm sitting there practicing my presentations. I'll practice my scripts even when I already know them because I want those scripts like patented. So when I have to go off of them, I'm so comfortable with what I already have said that I can just go right into it without thinking. And then it's also predicting what's going to happen in the future. So there's no one that's the best at what they do when they can't predict what's going to be coming next. So when somebody has a rebuttal for me, I like to practice to know what I have to say when they come back with that. I think it's what you do on your own time that makes a difference when you're with other people or out in the world when there's other people around.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm trying to get at is, like, what was it about the environment that you created for yourself? Like, when you're alone, that, like, allowed you to have that vision of the championship game and, you know, realize all the different practicing steps you need to get there?
I think part of it for me was I didn't want everyone else to come back different and me to be the exact same, honestly. I think I knew, I mean, everyone, like, changes when their environment changes a little bit. You kind of become what your environment is, and I'm like, well, I'm still the same person I am, obviously, but I'm not the same in the sense of, like, my habits. I'm not the same in the sense of, like my actual personality, like, the deep-rooted parts of me that are what make me are the same, but I wanted to change how I presented myself and how I came across to other people in certain...
Fire answer. That was sick.
All right, sweet.
All right, wait, we're at 17 minutes. Dude, this is honestly going really fucking good so far.
Best podcast by far. I think the planning ahead
totally
is pretty fire. Yeah.
But, hell yeah. All right, so...
That has been sick.
All right, hold up. So, I'm thinking right now, I want to, like, dive into, like, kind of like a second part. It's like... I think maybe we should break it here, and then we can just come to the second part.
Down to break.
Fuck it. Alright. So, alright, we just talked about, like, the environment and, like, realizing, like, coming to a change and, like, how you're able to do that, right?
Yeah.
I guess I think I'll go with this question. Like, you know, did you ever ask for, like, help when you were struggling with mental health, or like and, like, if so, like, what advice would you give to somebody who is maybe in a similar situation?
Yeah, I definitely asked for help. That's what turns it around for me, was I never really asking for help. That's, like, kind of what paused it from getting worse. And it took a little bit, and then it started to get better. And you were probably I think it was you were the first person I told. You were there, at least. I think it might have been me, you, Ryan, and Billy.
Wait, when are you talking about right now? I don't even know.
What was it? It was a weird night. It was a night when we were hanging out in your basement. I think it was the night I threw up in your bathroom.
That night?
Yeah, I think it was that night was the night I was like, all right, like, yeah. I think we had talked, I think it was that night.
I don't know if it could have been that night, because I was shit-faced. Like, I don't remember that night.
Well, see, I think it might have been that night because
Maybe.
if you didn't remember, it wouldn't have been. And then...
Because also, I think Aiden and Charlie were here that night, too.
Yeah, Aiden had fallen asleep down. I just remember, you remember it a little bit, too. It was a weird night.
That was a weird night.
It might have been, like, Billy. And Billy was just sitting there like, dude, I can't do this right now. I just remember that's it. And then, like, the next day we talked about it. And then I talked to my mom about it. And it was like, that's when the beans were split. I was like, dude, I'm just not okay right now.
Yeah.
It was that night into the next day, I would say, is when I admitted it, and I was like, I need, like, some support here. And then I did do maybe, like, 5 sessions with, like, a therapy person. I think it was something like that. And I would say it helped to talk to someone who had no idea who I was, no idea where I came from, because it was, like, an unbiased source and, like, reflection.
Yeah.
And he would just take notes, and then we'd, like, talk about it the next time.
Yeah, so I'm also somebody that, like, has struggled throughout my life to ask for help. I'm much better now than I was back, like, around this time period we're talking about. But, like, probably, like, 6 months down the line, that was, like, when I was struggling the worst I'd ever struggled with my mental health. And I just never could, like, get to the point to ask for help. So I'm just curious, like, if you had any advice for somebody that maybe is worried about the stigma of looking like a pussy and asking for help. Like,
yeah, I think there's a big difference between asking for help and, like, sulking in your own pity. I think what was making it worse for me is I was, like, sulking for myself. I was like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that, and I was hiding from it. And if you're gonna tell people and complain, you're not going to help yourself. You're going to keep making it worse. And other people aren't going to want to be around you because you're not helping yourself. You're just complaining and making it worse. Now, if you go up to that same person and you're like, hey, like, I need help. Like, I want to fix this, but if you have that want to fix this, people are much more open with you to be like, give you solutions and give you ideas. And if you actually listen to those solutions or not necessarily even take their advice. If they have good advice, take their advice. If they have things that you don't want to do, don't do them. But if you at least listen to them and acknowledge what they're saying, and maybe you don't take their advice, but you go home and you're, like, visibly trying to help yourself in some sort of way, you will start to feel better. And I think it's just realizing people in your life want to help you.
Yeah, I mean, especially the people in your life. And so are you essentially saying that, like, just be accepting of help and, like, open to it rather than just thinking that, like, nothing's ever gonna change, this is the end of my life, like, yada yada? Because
exactly,
like, we have so much more to go, like, and live for, like, you know, especially us, we're both super young, right? And when we were struggling super badly with this, like, it was around the same time period, we're both, like, 17, 18, like, like, you think it's the end of the world, the end of your life, when the smallest inconvenience happens, or, like, say you get your heart broken for the first time or whatever. But you have so much life ahead of you.
Yeah, exactly. I think a big part of it is too, when you've never asked for help before, you don't realize that other people have been struggling with it. Like, for instance, like, when me and you talked about it for the first time, I didn't think you had any struggles. And, like, stuff like that. Or, like, when I talked to my mom about it, she was like, yeah, I'm, like, almost 50 years old. I've had a couple, like, she, like, looked at me like I was a dumbass. I, like, thought, like, she's like, yeah, we've all done this, CJ. And I, like, when I realized, like, oh, everyone goes through this, it didn't, like, instantly make me feel better. But I was like, I'm just going to have to get through this, because everyone else who's been in life before, younger and older than me, has been through something and gotten through it. And I'm thinking, and now I get to the point where I think in my head, when I have something going shitty on, every once in a while, if it's, like, a really, like if it's something I'm annoyed with, like traffic, I'm like, oh my god. And then I'll sit there and I'll be like, well, at least I didn't have to, like, storm the beaches in Nam or something like that. Like, because like, seriously, that's the case. I'm like, I'm sitting in traffic right now, and I'm 22 years old, and, like, I have a pretty nice truck. I'm sitting there, and I'm like, I have no reason to complain at all. And I just shut up instantly, and it makes me feel better. And I'm like, if you catch yourself complaining and can stop yourself from complaining, that's a game changer and a half right there. That was a huge swing for me, is, like, realizing when I was complaining and stopping it.
So how has, like that shift in perspective changed, like, the way your personal growth journey has gone, I guess? Like,
I would say it makes me more of a, I would say not complaining has made me more of a doer. Like, you know, I rant sometimes. Like, if a figure of some sort says something I don't agree, like, I'm a ranter in that sense. But when it comes to complaining, like, I'm not gonna sit, like, if I have to get something done and I start complaining about it, I catch myself and I'm like, complaining isn't gonna make me feel better. Like, if I have to rake leaves or, like, move, like, do something dumb, but complaining isn't gonna make me feel better. But getting the task done and knowing it's behind me now will.
Yeah, that's so true. Like, and another way I like to look at a scenario like that is like when if I'm like making excuses for myself or whatever. So it's like, say I made a YouTube video and it doesn't do as well as I'd hope it did to do. I can make the excuse like, oh, like this is why, or this is why, or whatever. But it's like those excuses don't actually affect like the outcome. So
No.
it's like, why would they change any way you're doing it, I guess. And I want to also circle back to that other point about like perspective shift, like when you said you're sitting in traffic and you're like, it could be so much worse. Like it really could be. Like you could have like no arms, no legs, and just like because that happens. Like people happen, and like at least we're blessed enough to like, you know, get up every day and not have any like lingering health issues. Like it really puts it into perspective. And I was thinking about something you said the other day where it was like, oh, like just being grateful for what you have and what you are doing can like take away from some of the stresses that you might be putting on yourself in a moment.
Exactly. There really is, when you look at the grand scheme of things, life is what you make of it. You hear stories of people that have more money than they know what to do with, that live a life of sorrow. And you hear stories of people who come from no money, might have health issues, but they wake up every morning with a positive attitude, and they're so happy. Like you see it, like just in life, like you see people that are just genuinely happy and people who aren't. And it's not about what they have or who's in their life. It's about how they wake up and act every single day.
Yeah, I agree. I guess like shifting the outlook to like going towards the future, like there's always going to be good days and bad days, right? So it's like if you're having a day like and it's just okay and you're complaining to yourself, essentially making it a bad day, it's like, why would you ever want to do that? Because there is an actual like genuinely bad day coming where maybe like a close family member, God forbid, passes away, or like you're super sick, or like something like that's genuinely like an actually bad day. Like why are you going to sit here and take like a perfectly okay day and complain to yourself and make that into a bad day, right? So it's like just be grateful for every day and take it as it comes.
Yeah. I haven't mastered this yet. This is something I'm really trying to work on right now in particular. But when a bad day happens, I try to look at it as a learning experience. So let's say
that's powerful.
Big deal falls through, which would have been like my thing. Like that's what I've been focusing on all month. Or maybe I get in like a car accident that wasn't my fault. My car's stolen and I'm out of a car for a week. I try to look at it as like, why did this happen to me? What's my plan in the future? Like, what's going to happen in my future that God made this happen to me today, so I can learn and be prepared for that even bigger thing that's going to happen in the future? Because it is true, the more success you have, when you have problems, those problems are going to be even bigger than the problems you have now.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a true thing when they like call it $1 million problems. Like, that's like when you have more things that can, the greater you build yourself up, the bigger you can fall. And that's why you have to go through each step of life, because that's going to prepare you for the next one. And so when that minor thing that happened to you when you were younger made you have a meltdown, happens to you now, it doesn't seem like anything. And now when something major, what seems major to you now happens, when you go to that next step, it seems minor to you and you know how to get past it.
Yeah, that's actually really good way to look at challenges and setbacks, because it adopts like a growth mindset, right? So where rather than just pitying yourself for mistakes or whatever, you're allowing yourself that room to grow and say, hey, I'm still learning.
Exactly.
And I guess like the last question I would have for you is like, what gives you that hope and strength in those moments to like be optimistic about the outcome, even though it's a negative outcome?
This is a really faith-driven answer, but for me, it's just, I believe like God truly does have a bigger plan for me.
Show the shirt. Hold up.
I'm just out here trusting in God. But I truly believe God has a bigger plan for me. And so when those setbacks happen, and when those setbacks push me in a different direction that I wasn't expecting to go, or pushes me backwards when I thought I should be moving forwards, and all of a sudden the leaps are becoming even bigger and stronger than ever, it's just trusting that when that negative thing happens to me, that growth is coming. I just need to learn how to get past this point and accomplish this task, get past that objection and whatnot, keep moving forward.
Well said, my friend.
Thank you.
All right, so I think what we're going to do here is this is going to wrap up part 1 of our mental health episode, and we'll split it into a 2-part. So the next part will come next week, and we're going to talk more about like speaking your mind in regard to mental health. So stay tuned, and we'll have something good for you.
Love it.